Hello there, everyone. My name is Michael Osinski.
And I'm Tyler Esselman.
And you are listening to...
This one goes to 11.
That's
what is that,
right.
Michael? Is
well,
it our podcast?
It is, in fact, our podcast. And it's our podcast where we talk about an album. I mean, not just any album, though. We ask someone to come on to the podcast to bring an album to us that they believe is perfect.
So perfect, in fact, that 10 out of 10 just isn't good enough.
Nah, good enough.
No. Nope. No.
No.
Don't like it. No.
Oh, I hate it. I don't know.
Strictly 11s. Strictly 11s over here.
Oh man, we're getting goofy.
We're getting off. We're losing it a bit. That's okay. Maybe. I think people will enjoy listening to our descent into madness.
Yeah, that seems fitting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of descents into madness, we got a kooky one today. It was really revisiting this artist. Kind of reminded me just what a weirdo this person is. And I say that with all the love in my heart, but also a little bit of the skepticism in my heart, which I think is not unfair. And the person presenting them was a friend of yours who has become a friend of mine now. And who is it, Michael?
Indeed, she's a gem. Her name is Amanda Schoonover. She's an
Who
actor.
is she?
Well, she's an actor, best known as the sassy eavesdropping waitress on the GLAAD-nominated Dispatches from Elsewhere on AMC, where she co-starred opposite Jason Segel, Sally Field, and Andre 3000 Benjamin. If you didn't check that out, y'all, you really, really should. It's a trippy, awesome work of television that was all filmed in Philadelphia.
And someone passed under the radar, so yeah. Good. I'm looking forward to revisiting that.
She's a 2-time Barrymore Award recipient and 9-time nominee, as well as being a Gillian Ringel Solo Performance Program Artist in Residence at 1812 Productions and an F. Otto Haas Emerging Artist finalist. You may have seen her on television in HBO's Perry Mason or NBC's Do No Harm opposite Felicia Rashad.
Come on.
And We Need to Talk with James Maslow. And she's done a bunch of regional theater as well at the Arden Theater Company, Theater Exile, Pig Iron, and Lantern Theater. So, yes. And also, she was in and was also a co-creator of the show Red Lodge, Montana, the David Lynch-inspired piece that I made with a bunch of fantastic artists in Philadelphia in 2019 for the Philly Fringe Festival.
That was a big one for you.
Yeah, and last season we had a couple other members of that ensemble. We had Anthony and Terrell on talking about SZA. So
the family's all coming together. That's what we love.
And if you look on the website, my website, as well as the Antidote's website, and you see like the main photo for Red Lodge, Montana is Mandy screaming at a very pivotal moment in the whole show, and it's a pretty amazing photo. So
it's striking.
Striking, indeed.
It's striking, indeed.
Oh, you got me into dialects, and I shouldn't do that because my husband's going to critique me, so I'll stop.
Don't listen, Matt. Plug your ears, Matt.
Well, anyway, this feels like a good time to jump into the episode and hear what Mandy has to say.
Indubitably.
But Third Eye Blind did have that good song.
That one.
We talked about it. We talked about
that song.
I didn't realize it was about crystal meth, and I'm like, they say it in the freaking song.
And then it makes you think, how many other popular songs out there about crystal meth? Probably a lot. Or
masturbation.
Fornication.
Green Day, Cyndi Lauper, so many people.
Seriously.
Mandy Schoonover, I'm so happy to see you. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm so happy to see you too.
How is Philadelphia?
Philly's good. I came back, because I'm doing a bi-coastal thing right now, which is huge adjustment. But I'm here right now because I just filmed a feature film on Monday, and then next weekend I'm filming a short called Ligeia. It's based on the Edgar Allan Poe poem, so I'm going to be skulking around a Victorian mansion in a nightgown, and
that sounds on brand.
So yeah, no, it's so basic.
I'm so happy that you've gotten into film work now. It's like, I don't know. I mean, I think I've always thought that it was something you were meant to do, but now that you're doing it, it's great to see that.
It's an adjustment, like just the amount of work that you do with zero feedback. You start going like, am I insane? Like, why am I doing this?
Yeah. And even from moment to moment, like you crave that thing from the audience. You crave that, even if it's not an audible thing, it's the energetic thing. I've talked to a lot of people out here in La La Land about that, and that seems to be a sentiment that's shared pretty widely.
Yeah, well, and with the change, like we're never going back to being in the room to audition. I know everybody wants that, but it's just not going to happen. And so I think I came at a weird time where I'm like, well, how am I supposed to form relationships with people when they see me for 8 seconds if they don't turn off my tape before that? Like, how am I supposed to do that?
Through your glittering personality, which you got. You got one of those.
How are they going to know that if they don't talk to me?
It's tale as old as time.
Well, Mandy, what album hast thou brought before this one goes to 11 tribunal?
Okay, well, since you asked me what I thought was a masterpiece from beginning to end, I chose The Information by Beck.
Yes.
I think it surprised us both.
What did you expect?
Well, first of all, because I know you, I thought a part of me thought it was going to be a Jack White album. And then the other thing I thought was if it was going to be a Beck album, I wouldn't have thought this one in particular. So I've been looking forward to this conversation because I want to hear more about what you have to say about this. But before you start to make your case and before we evaluate your case, you get to evaluate us. So, Tyler, you're good at setting up this segment. Could you take it away?
I am good at setting up this segment, Mandy. Mandy, for our listeners out there who may not know who Beck is, or who may not be familiar with Beck's album, The Information, as you have brought before us today, we have a segment, everybody's favorite segment, that we like to call The Beginner's Guide to Beck's The Information in 60 seconds, wherein one of us gives a 60-second recap of that artist in this album, and then you get to decide how we did in whatever terms, points make sense to you. Michael will be giving the 60-second recap of Beck today. Michael, are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready. And Mandy,
you can
use whatever scale you want. We can be traditional schooling scale. You can get more. Someone rated us in colors once, so like it's all bets are off.
I believe there was a Hollywood handshake thrown in there.
There was.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Oh, you got a whole other world to be introduced to then. But anyway, Michael, are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
You may begin in 3, 2, 1, go.
Beck David Campbell is no perdedor. He was born in LA in 1970 to Bibi Hansen, a former collaborator to Andy Warhol's Factory, and David Campbell, a Canadian musician. Raised mostly Jewish, but also a little bit Scientologist, though he's no longer affiliated, he was drawn more to music and art than to traditional schooling. He never even started high school, but he did make himself a fake ID and sit in on classes at Los Angeles City College just for fun. His music interests? Eclectic, ranging from the hip-hop of Grandmaster Flash to the blues of Mississippi John Hurt to the post-beat jazz scene of Los Angeles, which explains the unique sounds of his first big hit, Loser, in 1993. His 2006 album, The Information, which is either his 7th, 9th, or 10th album, depending on what you count, is no different in its eclecticism. Described by Beck as, quote, introspective hip-hop, it was a collaboration with longtime Radiohead producer Nigel Godrich, and it enjoyed a very unconventional rollout, including low-budget videos for all 15 tracks and a design-your-own-album cover complete with a set of stickers. Collect all 4.
Count it.
Michael, I am impressed.
Yeah.
So how'd I do? What points? What score? What are you going to give me?
Give you an 11, Michael.
Oh my God!
The golden 11.
Our
favorite rating.
I especially appreciate, because one of the things I wanted to talk about was that the actual album when it came out was a DIY album cover. Like I'd never seen anything like it before. It looked like graph paper. So the cover was graph paper, and then it came with this sheet of stickers so that you could design your own album cover for the album.
That's a lot of work.
Come on. It's so cool.
Did you actually buy the actual CD? Because I feel like at that time, at that time people were still buying CDs, I think.
06? Yeah, it was the last gasp.
Yeah. Yes, actually it was given to me as a gift, and it was I was gifted the box set that came with, like, not only with the stickers and stuff, but it came with bonus tracks, and it came with its set of videos that were made just for the release of that box set. So they weren't the ones that were put out on MTV. You had to buy the DVD, set to get them. I mean, now I think you can see them on YouTube.
Probably,
yeah. That was one of the reasons that I chose this particular album, because I was like, every detail was thought of before they released this album. I just thought it was amazing.
Yeah, I'm going to give you 400 points on the board for the whole package of that album. That's a beautiful thing that might be coming back a little bit with the way that artists are doing vinyl pressings nowadays. I just kind of feel like it's not like a vinyl revival, I think, in the way that we think it might be, but there definitely is a lot of intention being put into that, from what I can tell with musicians these days.
Yeah, well, since we don't buy music like tactile music, or we buy it all digitally and stuff, so they're probably trying to give some incentives and this throwback feel of like albums. Like I don't know that they even make CDs anymore, but they're pressing like albums. I know Jack White has a center down in Nashville where they press albums and things like that. So I know it's making a comeback. And
though I think it got hit by the supply chain. There was a lot of supply chain stuff with that too.
Right.
The supply chain squeeze from COVID.
Well, I was going to say, but before we dive into the album too much, something that we like to do, Mandy, also is kind of our first question. We like to be more big picture, and that is just, what is your relationship with music, both now and in the past, just in general?
I have always, I've always loved music. I studied music in high school. I was in the band.
Excellent.
And the chorus, and oddly enough, don't love musicals, but love music. So I kind of, my dad had all these old records, my mom and dad, but my dad had most of them. And I started getting into music by listening to what he was listening to, which was the Beatles and the Doors. My mother loved Cream, which I thought was so interesting. That album is nothing but LSD. So.
Oh, it was that, or was it something about Eric Clapton where you're like, why does my mom trust this man?
No, it was really like, my mom had such an interesting taste in music. She loved Rick James's music, but did not like him the person, because he yawned at Barry Manilow.
Oh man, mom gets 600 points for that.
So I started listening to a lot of my dad's albums. And it wasn't until I sort of, even as a kid, I felt like I didn't totally understand the pop music that was going on. It was like Debbie Gibson. Nothing against her. She has a phenomenal voice. But the music was just too happy for me or something. And I felt like I didn't really connect to it. And it wasn't until my friend Heather Brand introduced me to 9 Inch Nails.
Now I see why you and Michael are friends.
And she played Something I Can Never Have for me. And it was like,
hell of a song.
For the first time in my life, I was like, someone understands me. This like little 13-year-old kid or however old I was like,
60 points for that. 60 points for someone.
Oh man, I'm like, you taking score on me? I'm like so nervous.
Oh, no, don't worry, you'll win. Yeah. You'll win. It's all good.
Don't tell her that. It's the central conceit of the podcast. Come on, Michael.
No. And as I've gotten older, my tastes have evolved. But I honestly think I like just about any genre of music as long as it's the right artist. Like, I don't love all country music, but I love Johnny Cash. I don't love all pop music, but Katy Perry's pretty great, or whatever.
This has been a consistent theme throughout our time making this podcast, is that we all just question the concept of genre to begin with, because some of our favorite artists, it seems, in society are the ones who are just like, genre is there to be subverted, I suppose, is one of the things that we have discovered about
and
it.
That's the main thing that I love about Beck is he defies genre. In fact, I would say that every single one of his albums is kind of a different genre. Like,
yeah, I would agree with that.
I love Mutations. That album is a country album.
Another Nigel Godrich collaboration, right?
I think
that
so.
one. I think what Mutations was, and then Midnight Vultures is basically like a funk album.
Yeah, it's
kinda?
like party sex album, and I don't know. Yeah. I've never met anyone who doesn't like it, because you're like, yes,
I know.
It makes doing your laundry
it is a good
sound
one.
Sexy.
I have a very specific memory of hearing Deborah for the first time ever from Midnight Vultures. Just like, I had never heard a song like Deborah, and I heard it was a cover at some like local St. Louis showcase of bands, and somebody covered Deborah and killed it. And then I went home and I was really into that song.
It's an amazing song, and another reason, like there's so many reasons I love Beck and his music, but he's always, you're always like, is he serious right now? Oh, no, I think he's serious. No, wait.
Yeah.
No, wait, is he? Wow. Like, he walks such a great fine line of like, I don't know if he's like trolling us. And I also kind of like being trolled.
300 points for is he serious right now, by the way. That's totally, knowing he's born and raised in LA too, he totally seems like an LA kid. Like living out here now, I love when I meet people that are truly from LA, because they got something about them. I hadn't really thought about it till I moved back out here. I knew New York kids who grew up in New York had a thing about them, but I didn't realize how much LA kids do. And Beck is maybe one of the prime examples of that.
Yeah, and you can really hear his like super LA vibe on Wedo. That album is all.
It was the first Beck album I ever heard.
Oh, what a great one! I almost picked that one.
That one. I mean, I will honestly, when you came to us with the Beck album, I sort of assumed that it would be either Guero or Odelay, or people also really love Sea Change, and I think the thing about Sea Change is like you think because he's so stylistically crazy that nothing about the music is personal, but then the album Sea Change is a freaking breakup album.
I can't see change. It really just tears me apart. I can't do it. I know.
It's okay. We need to talk about it. It's all good.
It's sad, yeah. And I don't think I actually like, when I think of sad albums, I know we're talking about the information, but when I think of sad albums, it's hard to actually, I can't really identify many sad albums. I know there's I couldn't come up with a good example, but when you say Sea Change, I think at least lyrically, something about the intersection of the lyrics and lyrical and musical quality really does come off melancholy. There's a real melancholy.
Yeah, I even think Mutations is fairly melancholy. And maybe it's just because that, the second song on the album is like tears you apart. Nobody's fault but my own. Like, it's just like, oh God.
Let's take it back for a second then. So 2006, you were already an established Beck fan then.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty much a Beck fan from the moment I saw Loser on MTV. I was like, oh, this guy.
What do you think of Loser? Is it overrated?
No.
Is it like his creep?
No, I don't think so at all.
I say his creep in a complimentary way, actually.
But,
I think.
Except for the fact that, like, it's not his creep because it's not his most famous song, right? Like Creep is still Radiohead's most famous song.
Oh, yeah.
That everybody knows.
Sure. Okay.
Whereas most...
I guess in my head, I'm thinking Loser is his most famous song, but I wonder what has the most. I gotta look here to see what has the most song, the most listens.
Like it's gotta be like 2 turntables and a microphone, or so. I don't know.
Yeah, where it's at. Yeah.
Yeah, the
top. The video for Loser. Hold on a second. The video for Loser was directed by his friend Steve Hanft, and it was shot with a $300 shooting budget,
which is clear.
Love that.
I love the girls jazzercising. Like, I'm sorry, it's amazing.
Yeah,
it's so cool.
I have to remember the Spotify rankings. The top tracks on there are not an accurate representation of what the most popular song is for an artist, really, because Loser's top, and then his second most listened to song on Spotify currently is, or the one that's ranked second, is actually a song from that most recent Gorillaz album that features him. So I don't count this.
Interesting.
Let that be stricken from the record. There won't be. I'm the keeper of the record, and I say it's stricken.
So are you losing points for that one?
No, you're just gaining points. I'm not losing anything, but you're just gaining points.
Yeah, pretty much from the first time that I saw that video, I was just like, who is this smartass? And, you know, the 90s were like such an interesting time for music. And he was like part of what they called the slacker generation. And I love seeing this interview where he was like, I don't know why everyone calls me that. I work so hard.
Yeah. Right.
But there was just something about the laid back, smart ass, and the way he could turn a phrase. And I just never heard anything quite like it. It wasn't quite rap. It wasn't quite folk music. I'm like, I've never heard anything like this.
He definitely sings sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Other times he does the thing that John McCrae does in Cake, the like talk singing thing. But you know, I say John McCrae because they were doing that at the same time. But it goes back to Dylan. You know, Dylan basically sang like that too. So I see a lot of Bob Dylan in his vocal quality.
Yeah, and Beck, can he obviously can sing because Deborah. Like, is that a white boy? Like, what's going on?
That is Beck. The whitest boy of all time, Beck.
Like breaking it down.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So when you got the information, was it instant love, or was it one that had to grow on you a little bit?
No, I wore that album out. I could not stop listening to it. It was so, like, the reason I think that this album is a masterpiece is he's at the golden age of his like decadence. It's so layered. There's so much going on. I think he also just had a baby.
I think that might be right in the chronology.
And if you listen to it, you can hear him playing with his kids' toys. Being like, like it sounds like a speak and spell.
Yeah.
And I love sort of imagining him being like, what is this thing?
He's the baby.
Yeah, like,
he's a big baby.
This would sound really good on an album.
Now I'm just imagining like Beck, the adult man dressed up as a baby, you know, like with a diaper and a bonnet.
But like in a recording studio.
That doesn't seem out of character at all, as I understand this quirky man to be like just kind of fascinated with the sounds that are surrounding him at any given moment during a day.
Yeah. And that is super, super clear on this album. Really taking electronica, but not how we think of electronic music, and sort of pushing it with this kind of like, I hate to say it because I'm not a big fan of what people call singer-songwriter. But Beck is like the closest that I get to it, because I do think that his lyrics are really fascinating. He's like a beat poet for Gen Xers.
Yep.
You know,
450 points for that.
Thank you.
Beat poet for Gen Xers. Yeah, that's apt.
I think the term singer-songwriter, so often when I hear that term, I don't think of someone like Beck, because I feel like the term singer-songwriter has become to be associated with, you know, like Starbucks music, you know, like the sort of like people who write their own music and play it, but it always feels like it has that sort of like soft, rocky pop, but a little bit of folk.
It's like festival music, and I just wouldn't be caught dead at a festival. Like, it's just I did go see Beck at a festival. It was called Across the Narrows, and it was on Coney Island.
Oh,
I bet that was fun.
It was really cool. The Ravenettes were there. I'd never seen them. Talk about a David Lynch inspired band.
oh yeah, wow.
Whoa! You get 1,000,000 points for seeing the Ravenettes. Did you see them?
Yes, they were. I was like, who is this?
That's amazing.
And then it was, I'm going to lose some points here because I can never remember their damn name. It was that band that they all dress in the like choir outfits.
Polyphonic
That's
Spree?
it. Polyphonic Spree.
Oh, shit.
They were there.
That's
Really?
That's officially the first mention of Polyphonic Spree on this podcast, I
Official,
believe.
man, you get a special award. You get a special commendation for mentioning Polyphonic Spree. We're gonna make an award in your honor for
I'll
that.
probably put it in my bio going forward, just so you know. I'm gonna award.
I think this is also the first time I've ever mentioned cake. Like I love
Cake's
cake,
great.
and that cake's amazing.
Yeah.
People hate on cake.
No, they're great.
Cake gets far more hate than they deserve.
Well, and I agree. I think they're super fun. Like they had one of the best covers of a song ever. So the band who opened up for Beck, I might be losing some points here, but also consider the source. It was Belle and Sebastian.
No way.
And I was like, I've got to suffer through an hour of this track.
I like Belle and Sebastian. Come on.
They were a terrible set. They were not
Really.
good.
That does
Not
happen.
rehearsed.
That does happen.
And there was so much lag time in between their songs. I'm like, let's go. And then Beck came on. It was one of the coolest shows I've ever seen. He played every damn instrument on that stage, including this massive squeeze box looking thing. He played every instrument on that stage. And Michael, you would have loved this show because when they had little vignettes. Again, it was like an art, it was like an art show. It was a performance art. And during this set where he played his saddest songs, like from Sea Change and Mutations, the rest of the band was sitting at this long table eating, just like eating.
Really?
It was so funny. It's kind of like, to me, it was kind of like, don't take it too seriously, right? Because the band's like chowing down on this feast. And then at the end of that set, all the band started playing the flatware and all the stuff on the table. And I'm just like,
wow. Wow. There is so much that has so many layers to it. I feel like just even not knowing anything else about it, even just knowing those bare details about it, that's effective performance art when you can mention like 3 aspects of it, and no matter how many other details are present, you capture the spirit of what was trying to be expressed. Yeah. And it's like the communion of having people break bread while you're playing a song. That's an amazing thing.
The whole show was so cool. And it started out with someone he had a dancer with him for a while who looked very much like him. And he was in a jumpsuit and he came out dancing. And of course, everyone thought it was Beck. And then it wasn't Beck, right? Because then there's another Beck. And he did explain to us that he was told he was not physically allowed, like a doctor told him he was not allowed to dance the way he used to, because I think he must have like busted a kneecap or something.
Yeah. Hey, it's hazardous. It's hazardous. Being a rock star can be quite a dangerous line of work.
The way the show was set up, I also think of him, even though he hasn't made as many music videos as some other artists, but I do think of him as someone who thinks about the visuals behind his music. And it makes sense to me that I think he's made multiple music videos with Michel Gondry, the guy who directed Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, who's uses those sort of, they look like cheap tricks, but it's just more like a sleight of hand, not relying on any sort of CGI to make the effect happen.
Are you talking about Girl? The video for Girl?
Well, that one, and also there's that. Do you remember that? Oh, that terrible movie that Ewan McGregor and Cameron Diaz were in?
Yeah. That is Don't Let the Sun.
Lifeless Ordinary.
Yeah, Don't Let the Sun Catch You Crying, or whatever.
Yeah. That video where it's like he's in an office or something, and then it's But I think of that aesthetic, the Michel Gondry aesthetic, as being very closely linked with Beck. It's like there's a DIY element to it, and there's also sort of a, what am I watching? I have no idea what I'm watching.
Love it.
Yeah. I think this might be a good opportunity for you to introduce a song from the Dang album itself. We asked you to pick a standout track, and which track did you pick as your standout from the whole album over?
I picked 1000 BPM.
And why did you choose that?
Because it is an absolute fever dream of insanity set to like
Hey, you don't need to sell it much more than that. That sounds freaking great. It is great. It is a great song. I think this is good. And Michael and I were kind of talking about how it's a little. We found it challenging to pick ours. We'll introduce ours at the end, but I look forward to hearing. We'll look in the second half. We'll have you explain why you thought this was the standout track. But let's listen to it for now. Here's 1,000 beats per minute.
Get your eardrums ready, y'all.
That's the end of part 1. If you access this episode via our YouTube playlist, you're about to hear our guest's standout track. If you'd like to jump ahead to part 2, you'll find a link in the description of this episode.